Hello, and welcome back to Baby Elias's stories. We now return to Jingo by Terry Pratchett. Part 13.
Stop complaining, Nobby.
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying these trousers are a bit draughty. That's all I'm saying.
They look good on you, though.
And what are these tin bows supposed to be doing?
They're supposed to be protecting the bits you haven't got, Nobby.
The way this breeze is blowing, I could do with some to protect the bits I have.
Just try and act ladylike, will you, Nobby?
Which would be hard, Sergeant Cullen had to admit. The lady for whom the clothes had been made had been quite tall and somewhat full-figured, whereas Nobby, without his armour, could have hidden behind a short stick if you attached a toast rack to it about 2/3 of the way up. He looked like a gauzy accordion with a lot of jewellery. In theory, the costume would have been quite revealing if Corporal Nobbs was something you wished to see revealed. But there were so many billows and folds now that all one could reliably say was that he was in there somewhere. He was leading the donkey, which seemed to like him. Animals tended to like Nobby. He didn't smell wrong.
And them boots don't work,
Sergeant Cullen went on. Why not? You kept yours on.
Yeah, but I'm not supposed to be a flower of the desert, right? A moon of someone's delight shouldn't kick up sparks when she walks. Am I right?
They belong to my gran. I ain't leaving them around for anyone to nick. And I ain't mooning for anyone's delight, said Nobby sulkily. Lord Veterinary strode on ahead. The streets were already filling up. Al-Khali liked to get the business of the day started in the cool of dawn, before full day flame-throwered the landscape. No one paid the newcomers any attention, although a few people did turn round to watch Corporal Nobbs. Goats and chickens ambled out of the way as they passed.
Watch out for people trying to sell you dirty postcards, Nobby, said Cullen. My uncle was here once, and he said some bloke tried to sell him a pack of dirty postcards for $5. Disgusted he was.
Yeah, 'cause you can get 'em in the shades for $2, said Nobby.
That's what he said. And they were Ankh-Morpork ones, trying to flog us our own dirty postcards. I call that disgusting, frankly.
Good morning, Sultan, said a cheerful and somehow familiar voice. New in town, are we? All three of them turned to a figure that had magically appeared from the mouth of an alleyway. Indeed, yes, said the patrician. I could see you were. Everyone is these days, and it is your lucky day, Shah. I am here to help, right? You want something? I got it. Sergeant Cullen had been staring at the newcomer. He said in a far-away voice,
Your name's going to be something like Al-Jibla or something, right?
Heard about me, have you? Said the trader jovially.
Sort of, yeah,
said Cullen slowly.
You're amazingly familiar.
Lord Veterinary pushed him aside. We are strolling entertainers, he said. We were hoping to get an engagement at the prince's palace. Perhaps you could help. The man rubbed his beard thoughtfully, causing various particles to cascade into the little bowls in his tray.
Dunno about the palace, he said. What's it you do?
We practice juggling, fire eating, that sort of thing, said Veterinary.
Do we?
Said Cullen. Al-Jibla nodded at Nobby.
What does
she, said Lord Veterinary helpfully.
She do?
Exotic dancing, said Veterinary, while Nobby scowled.
Pretty exotic, I should think,
said Al-Jibla. You'd be amazed. A couple of armed men had drifted over to them. Sergeant Cullen's heart sank. In those bearded faces he saw himself and Nobby, who at home would always saunter over to anything on the street that looked interesting.
You are jugglers, are you?
Said one of them.
Let's see you juggle then.
Lord Veterinary gave them a blank look and then glanced down at the tray around Al-Jibla's neck. Among the more identifiable foodstuffs were a number of green melons. Very well, he said, and picked up 3 of them. Sergeant Cullen shut his eyes. After a few seconds he opened them again, because a guard had said, All right, but anyone can do it with 3. In that case, perhaps Mr. Al-Jibla will throw me a few more, said the patrician, as the bowls spun through his hands. Sergeant Cullen shut his eyes again. After a short while a guard said, 7 is pretty good, but it's just melons. Cullen opened his eyes. The Klatchian guard twitched his robe aside. Half a dozen throwing knives glinted, and so did his teeth. Lord Veterinary nodded. To Cullen's growing surprise, he did not seem to be watching the tumbling melons at all. 4 melons and 3 knives, he said. If you would care to give the knives to my charming assistant, Betty.
Who?
Said Nobby.
Oh, why not 7 knives then?
Kind sirs, that would be too simple, said Lord Veterinary. Side note 13. Jugglers will tell you that juggling with items that are identical is always easier than a mixture of all shapes and sizes. This is even the case with chainsaws, although of course when the juggler misses the first chainsaw, it is only the start of his problems. Some more will be along very shortly. End side note 13. Kind sirs, that would be too simple, said Lord Veterinary. I am but a humble tumbler. Please, let me practice my art.
Betty,
said Nobby, glowering under his veils. 3 fruits arced gently out of the green whirl and thumped onto Al-Jibla's tray. The guards looked carefully, and to Cullen's mind nervously, at the cross-dressed figure of the cross-corporal.
She's not going to do any kind of dance, is she?
One of them ventured.
No,
snapped Betty.
Promise?
Side note 14. Corporal Nobbs's appearance could best be summarized this way. One of the minor laws of the narrative universe is that any homely featured man who has, for some reason to disguise himself as a woman will apparently become attractive to some otherwise perfectly sane men with, as the ancient scrolls say, hilarious results. In this case, the laws were fighting against the fact of corporal nobby nobs and gave up. End side note 14. Nobby grabbed 3 of the knives and tugged them out of the man's belt.
I'll give them to to him, shall I, Betty?
Said Cullen, suddenly quite sure that keeping the patrician alive was almost certainly the only way to avoid a brief cigarette in the sunshine. He was also aware that other people were drifting over to watch the show.
To me, please, Al,
said the patrician, nodding. Cullen tossed him the knives, slowly and gingerly. He's going to try to stab the guards, he thought. It's a ruse, and then everyone's going to tear us apart. Now the circling blur glinted in the sunlight. There was a murmur of approval from the crowd. Yet somehow dull, said the patrician, and his hands moved in a complex pattern that suggested that his wrists must have moved through one another at least twice. The tangled ball of hurtling fruit and cutlery leaped into the air. The tangled ball of hurtling fruit and cutlery leapt into the air. 3 melons dropped to the ground, cut cleanly in 2. 3 knives thudded into the dust a few inches from their owner's sandals, and Sergeant Cullen looked up and into a growing, greenish, expanding. The melon exploded, and so did the audience, but both their laughter and the humor was slightly lost on Cullen as he scraped overripe pith out of his ears. The survival instinct cut in again. Stagger around backwards, it said. So he staggered around backwards, waving his legs in the air. Fall down heavily, it said. So he sat down and almost squashed a chicken. Lose your dignity, it said. Of all the things you've got, it's the one you can most afford to lose. Lord Veterinary helped him up. Our very lives depend on your appearing to be stupid, fat idiot, he hissed, putting Cullen's fez back on his head.
I ain't very good at acting, sir. Good. Yes, sir.
The patrician scooped up 3 melon halves and positively skipped over to a stall that a woman had just set up, snatching an egg from a basket as he went past. Sergeant Cullen blinked again. This was not real. The patrician didn't do this sort of thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, you see an egg. And here we have a melon rind. Egg, melon, melon, egg. We put the melon over the egg.
His hands darted across the 3 halves, switching them at bewildering speed. Round and round they go, just like that. Now, where's the egg?
What about you, sir?
Al Gibler smirked.
It's the one on the left, he said. It always is.
Lord Veterinary lifted the melon. The board below was eggless.
And you, noble guardsman? It's got to be the one in the middle, said the guard.
Yes, of course. Oh dear, it isn't. The crowd looked at the last melon. They were street people. They knew the score. When the object can be under one of the 3 things, and it's already turned out not to be under 2 of them, then the one place it was certainly not going to be was under the 3rd. Only some kind of gullible fool would believe something like that. Of course, there was going to be a trick. There always was a trick. but you watched it in order to see a trick done well. Lord Veterinary raised the melon nevertheless, and the crowd nodded in satisfaction. Of course it wasn't there. It'd be a pretty poor day for street entertainment if things were where they were supposed to be. Sergeant Cullen knew what was going to happen next, and he knew this because for the last minute or so something had been pecking at his head. Aware that this was probably his moment, he raised his fez and revealed a very small, fluffy chick.
Have you got a towel? I am afraid it has just gone to the toilet on my head, sir.
There was laughter, some applause, and, to his amazement, a tinkling of coins around his feet.
And finally, said the patrician, the beautiful Betty will do an exotic dance.
The crowd fell silent. Then someone at the back said,
How much do we have to pay for her not to?
Right, I've just about had enough of this. Veils flying out behind her, bangles jingling, elbows waving viciously and boots kicking up sparks. The lovely Betty strode into the crowd. Which of you said that? People shrank away from her. Armies would have retreated. And there, revealed like a jellyfish deserted by a suddenly ebbing tide, was a small man about to fry in the wrath of the ascendant knobs. I meant no offence, although I'd one. Oh, pastry-faced, am I? Nobby flung out an arm in a crash of bracelets and knocked the man over. You've got a lot to learn about women, young man. And then, because the knobs could never resist a prone target, the petite Betty drew back a steel-capped boot. Betty! Snapped the patrician. Oh, right. Yeah, right, said Nobby with veiled contempt. Everyone can tell me what to do, right? Just because I happen to be the woman around here, I'm supposed to accept it all, eh?
No, you just ain't supposed to kick him in a fork, hissed Cullen, pulling him away. It don't look good.
Although he noted the women in the crowd seemed to be disappointed by the sudden curtailment of the performance. Curtailment, to make less by or as if by cutting off or away some part. Curtailment. Although he noted the women in the crowd seemed to be disappointed by the sudden curtailment of the performance.
And there are many strange stories we can tell you, shouted the patrician.
Betty certainly could, murmured Cullen, and was kicked sharply on his ankle.
And many strange sights we can show you. Betty said, "Argh!" But for now, we will seek the shade of yonder caravanserai.
Caravanserai. An inn surrounding a court in eastern countries where caravans rest at night. Caravanserai. Hotel or inn. But for now, we will seek the shade of yonder caravanserai.
What are we doing?
We're going to the pub. The crowd began to disperse, but with occasional amused glances back at the trio. One of the guards nodded at Cullen.
Nice show, he said.
Especially the bit where your lady didn't remove any veils. He darted behind his colleague as Nobby spun round like an avenging angel. Sergeant, the patrician whispered, it is very important that we learn the current whereabouts of Prince Cadram. Do you understand? In taverns, people talk. Let us keep our ears open. The tavern wasn't Colin's idea of a pub. For one thing, most of it had no roof. Arched walls surrounded a courtyard. A grapevine grew out of a huge cracked urn and had been teased overhead on trellises. Trellis, a frame of lattice work used as a screen or as a support for climbing plants. Trellis. A grapevine grew out of a huge cracked urn and had been teased overhead on trellises. There was the gentle sound of tinkling water, and unlike the mended drum, this was not because the bar backed on to the privies, but because of a small fountain in the middle of the cobbles. And it was cool, much cooler than in the street, even though the vine leaves scarcely hid the sky.
Didn't know you could juggle, sir,
Cullen whispered to Lord Veterinary. You mean you can't, Sergeant?
No, sir.
How strange. It's hardly a skill, is it? One knows what the objects are and where they want to go. After that, it's just a case of letting them occupy their current positions in time and space.
You're dead good at it, sir. Practice often, do you?
Until today, I've never tried. Lord Veterinary looked at Colin's astonished expression. After Ankh-Morpork, Sergeant, a handful of flying melons present a very minor problem indeed.
I'm amazed, sir.
And in politics, Sergeant, it is always important to know where the chicken is. Colin raised his fez.
Is this one still on my head?
It seems to have gone to sleep. I wouldn't disturb it if I were you.
You, juggler. She can't come in here.
They looked up. Someone with a face and apron that said barman in 700 languages was standing over them, a wine jug in each hand.
No women in here,
he went on.
Why not?
Said Nobby.
No women asking questions neither.
Why not?
'Cause it is written. That's why.
Where am I supposed to go then? The barman shrugged.
Who knows where women go?
Off you go, Betty, said the patrician. And listen for information. Nobby grabbed the cup of wine from Colin and gulped it down. I don't know, he moaned. I've only been a woman 10 minutes, and already I hate you, mayor bastards.
I don't know what's got into him, sir,
whispered Colin as Nobby stamped out.
He ain't like this normally. I thought Klatchian women did what they were told.
Does your wife do what she's told, Sergeant?
Well, yeah, obviously. A man's got to be the master in his own house. That's what I always say.
So why are you, I hear, always putting up kitchen furniture?
Well, obviously, you've got to listen to.
In fact, Klatchian history is full of famous examples of women who even went to war with their men, said the patrician.
What? On the same side?
Prince Achven's wife, Tistum, used to ride into the battle with her husband and, according to legend, killed 10,000 men.
That's a lot of them. That's a lot of men.
Legends are prone to inflation. However, I believe there is good historical evidence that Queen Sowawandra of Sumtri had more than 30,000 people put to death during her reign. She could be quite touchy, they say.
You should hear my wife if I don't put the plates away,
said Sergeant Cullen gloomily. Now we are integrated with the local population, Sergeant, said the patrician. We must find out what is happening. Although an invasion is clearly planned, I feel sure Prince Cadram will have reserved some forces in case of land attack. It would be nice to know where they are, because that's where he will be.
Right.
You think you can handle this?
Yes, sir. I know Klatchian, sir. Don't you worry about it.
Here's some money. Buy drinks for people. Mingle.
Right.
Not too many drinks, but as much mingling as you are capable of.
I'm a good mingler, sir.
Off you go then.
Sir.
Yes?
I'm a bit worried about Betty, sir. Going off like that. Anything might happen to her.
But he spoke with some hesitation. There wasn't much you could imagine happening to Corporal Nobbs. I'm sure we shall hear about it if there are any problems, said the patrician.
You're right there, sir.
Colin sidled over to a group of men who were sitting in a rough circle on the floor, talking quietly amongst themselves and eating from a large dish. He sat down. The men on either side of him obediently shuffled along. Now, then, how did you... right. Anyone knew how Klatchians talked?
Greetings, fellow brothers of the desert, he said. I don't know about you, but I could just do with a plate of sheep's eyeballs, eh? I bet you boys can't wait to be back on your camels. I know I can't. I spit upon the defiling dogs of Ankh-Morpork. Anyone had any backsheesh lately? You can call me Al.
Excuse me, are you the lady who is with the clowns? Corporal Nobbs, who had been trudging along gloomily, looked up. He was being addressed by a pleasant-faced young woman. A woman actually talking to him by choice was a novelty. Smiling while doing so was unheard of.
Yeah, right, that's me, he swallowed. Betty!
My name is Bana. Would you like to come and talk with us? Nobby looked past her. There were a number of women of varying ages sitting around a large well. One of them waved at him shyly. He blinked. This was uncharted territory. He looked down at his clothes, which were already the worse for wear. His clothes always looked the worse for wear 5 minutes after he'd put them on. Oh, don't worry, said the girl. We know how it is. But you looked so alone, and perhaps you can help us. They were among the group now. There were women of every legitimate shape and size, and so far none of them had said, yuck. An experience hitherto unchronicled in Nobby's personal history. In a detached, light-headed way, Corporal Nobbs felt that he was entering paradise, and it was only an unfortunate detail that he'd come to via the wrong door. We are trying to comfort Natal, said the girl. Her betrothed won't marry her tomorrow.
The swine,
said Nobby. One of the girls, eyes red with crying, looked up sharply. He wanted to, she sobbed, but he's been taken off to fight in Gebra. All over some island no one's heard of.
and all my family are here. Who took him off? Said Nobby.
He took himself off, snapped an older woman. Clothing differences aside, there was something hauntingly familiar about her. And Nobby realized that if you cut her in half, the words mother-in-law would be all the way through.
Oh, Mrs. Akbar, said Natal. He said it was his duty. Anyway, all the boys have had to go. Men, said Nobby, rolling his eyes.
I expect you'd know a lot about the pleasures of men then, said mother-in-law sourly.
Mother! Who? Me?
Said Nobby, forgetting himself for a moment.
Oh yeah, lots.
You do?
Why not?
Beer's favourite, said Nobby.
But you can't beat a good cigar as long as it's free. Ha!
Mother-in-law picked up a basket of washing and stamped away, followed by most of the older women. The others laughed. Even the disappointed Natal smiled.
I think that's not what she meant,
said Banner. To a chorus of giggles, she leaned down and whispered in Nobby's ear. His expression did not change, but it did seem to solidify.
Oh, that,
he said. There were some worlds of experience which Nobby had only contemplated on a map, but he knew what she was talking about. Of course, he'd patrolled certain parts of the Shades in his time, the ones where young ladies tended to hang around without very much to do, and probably catching cold too. But those areas of police work that in other places might be of interest to a vice squad now tended to be looked after by the Guild of Seamstresses themselves. People who neglected to obey not the law as such, call them the unwritten rules, as laid down by Mrs. Palm and her committee of very experienced ladies. Side note 15. And Mr. Harris of the Blue Cat Club, his admission caused a lot of argument in the guild, who knew competition when they saw it, but Mrs. Palm overruled opposition on the basis. She said that unnatural acts were only natural. End side note 15. People who neglected to obey not the law as such, call them the unwritten rules, as laid down by Mrs. Palm and her committee of very experienced ladies, attracted the attention of the agony aunts, Dotsy and Sadie, and might or might not be seen again. Even Mr. Vimes approved of the arrangement. It didn't cause paperwork.
Oh yeah,
said Nobby, still staring at some inner screen. Of course, he knew what.
Oh, that, he mumbled. Well, I seen a thing or two,
he added, largely on postcards, he had to admit.
It must be wonderful to have so much freedom, said Bana.
Natal burst out crying again. Her friends fluttered around her.
I don't see why the men have to go off like this, said Bana. My betrothed has gone too.
There was a cackle from a very old woman sitting by the well.
I can tell you why, dears. Because it's better than growing melons all day. It's better than women. Men think war is better than women. It's always fresh, it's always young, and you can make a good fight last all day. But they get killed. Better to die in battle than in bed, they say. She cracked a toothless grin. But there are good ways for a man to die in bed, eh, Betty? Nobby hoped the glow of his ears wasn't singeing his veil. Suddenly, he felt he'd caught up with his future. 10 damn pence worth of it hit him in the face. "Excuse me," he said. "Are any of you Nubilians?" "What are Nubilians?" said Bana. "It's a country round here," said Nobby. He added hopefully, "Isn't it?" Not a single face suggested that this was so. Nobby sighed. His hand reached up to his ear for a cigarette end, but it came down again empty. "I'll tell you this, girls," he said. "I wish I'd settled for the $10 version. Don't you just sometimes want to sit down and cry?" "You look even sadder than Netal," said Bana. "Isn't there some way we can cheer you up?" Nobby stared at her for a moment and then started to sob. Everyone was staring at Colin, their food halfway to their lips.
Did I just hear him say that, Faifal? What do I want to be on a camel for? I'm a plumber. He is the clown with the juggler, I think. The poor man is several palms short of an oasis. I mean, the bloody things spit, and they're a bugger to get up the stairs with your toolbox. Now, come on, it's not his fault. Let's show a little charity.
The speaker cleared his throat.
Good morning, friend, he said. May we invite you to share our couscous?
Sergeant Cullen peered at the bowl and then dipped in a finger and tasted it.
Hey, this is semolina. You got semolina. It's just ordinary semol...
He stopped and coughed.
Yeah, right, thanks. Got any strawberry jam?
The host looked at his friends. They shrugged.
We know not of this strawberry ham of which you speak, he said carefully. We prefer it with lamb.
He offered Colin a long wooden skewer.
Oh, you got to have strawberry jam,
he said, Cullen, carried away.
When we were kids, we'd stir it in and
he looked at their faces.
Of course, that was back in Ur,
he said. The men nodded at one another. Suddenly, it was all clear. Colin belched loudly.
Bleh.
From the looks he got from everyone else, he was the only one who'd heard of this common Klatchian custom.
So, he said, where's the army these days? Approximately.
Why do you ask, oh full of gas one?
Oh, we thought we could make a bit of cash entertaining the troops, said Cullen.
He was immensely proud of this idea.
You know, a smile, a song, a lack of exotic dancing. But that means we got to know where they are, see?
Excuse me, fat one, but can you understand what I am saying?
Yes, it's very tasty,
Cullen hazarded.
Ah, I thought so. So he's a spy.
But whose?
Really? Who would be so stupid as to use a joke like this as a spy?
Ankh-Morpork?
Oh, come on. He's pretending to be an Ankh-Morpork spy, perhaps. But they're cunning over there.
You think? A people who make curry out of something called curry powder, and you think they're clever?
I reckon he's from Muntab.
They're always watching us and pretend to be from Ankh-Morpork. Well, if you were trying to look like a joke Morporkian pretending to be Klatchian, wouldn't you look like that? But why'd he pretend to be from here? Politics. Let's call the watch then. Are you mad? We've been talking to him. They will be inquisitive. Good point. I know. Faifal gave Colin a big grin. I did hear the entire army has marched away to En al-Sams Lalaisa, he said. But don't tell anyone.
Have they?
Colin glanced at the other men. They were watching him with curiously deadpan expressions.
Sounds like a massive place with a name like that,
he said. Oh, huge, said his neighbour. One of the other men made a noise that you might think was a suppressed chuckle.
It's a long way, is it?
No, very close. You're practically on top of it, said Faifal. He nudged a colleague whose shoulders were shaking.
Oh, right. Big army, is it?
Could easily be very big, yes.
Fine,
said Cullen.
Anyone got a pencil? I could have sworn I had one when...
There was a noise outside the tavern. It was the sound of many women laughing, which is always a disquieting noise to men. Side note, 16. Usually because they suspect the joke's on them. End side note 16. There was a noise outside the tavern. It was the sound of many women laughing, which is always a disquieting noise to men. Customers peered suspiciously through the vines. Colin and the rest of the crowd looked around an urn at the group by the well. An old lady was rolling on the ground laughing, and various younger ones were leaning against one another for support. He heard one of them say, "What did he say again?"
He said, "That's funny. It's never done that when I've tried it."
"Yeah, that's true," cackled the old woman. "It never does."
"That's funny. It's never done that when I've tried it,"
Nobby repeated. Colin groaned. That was the voice and tone of Corporal Nobbs in storytelling mode. When wood could scorch at 10 yards.
"Excuse me,"
he muttered, and forced his way through the press to the gateway.
"Have you heard the one about the Sultan who was afraid one of his wives, would be unfaithful to him while he was away?"
"We haven't heard any stories like these, Betty," Bana gasped.
"Oh, really? Oh, I've got 1,001 of them. Well, anyway, he went and saw the wise old blacksmith, right? And he said..."
"You can't go around telling stories like that, Betty."
Colin panted as he lumbered to a halt. Nobby realized that a change had come over the group. Now he was surrounded by women who were in the presence of a man. A known man, he corrected himself. Several of them were blushing. They hadn't blushed before.
"Why not?"
said Betty nastily.
"You'll offend people,"
said Cullen uncertainly. We are not offended, sir," said Bana in a small, humble voice. "We think Betty's stories are very instructive, especially the one about the man who went into the tavern with the very small musician."
"And that was pretty hard to translate," said Nobby, "because they don't really know what a piano is in Klatch. But it turns out there's this kind of stringed..."
And it was very interesting about the man with his arms and legs in plaster, said Natal.
Yeah, they laughed even though they didn't have the same kind of doorbells here, said Nobby. Here, you don't have to go. But the group around the well was dispersing. Water jugs were being picked up and carried away. A kind of preoccupied busyness came over the women. Bana nodded at Betty. Thank you. It's been very interesting. But we must go. It was so kind of you to talk to us.
No, don't go.
A faint suggestion of perfume hung in the air. Betty glared at Cullen.
Sometimes I really want to give you a right ding alongside the lug hole, she growled. My first bloody chance in years, and you...
She stopped. There was a crowd of puzzled yet disapproving faces behind Cullen. And things might have ended otherwise, had it not been for the braying of the donkey from above.
Hee-haw, hee-haw.
The stolen donkey, easily pulling away from Nobby's inexpert tether, had wandered off in search of food. She vaguely associated this with the doorway to her stable, and therefore with doorways in general, and so had wandered through the nearest open one. There had been some narrow spiral stairs inside, but her stall was pretty narrow, and steps didn't worry a donkey that was used to the streets of Al-Khali. It was only a disappointment when the steps came to an end, and there was still no hay.
Oh no, said someone behind Colin. There's a donkey up in the minaret again.
There were groans all around.
Oh. What's wrong with that? What goes up must come down, said Cullen.
You don't know? Said one of his dining companions. You don't have minarets in Ur?
Said Cullen.
We have plenty of donkeys,
said Lord Veterinary. There was general laughter, most of it directed at Cullen. One of the men pointed to the dim interior of the minaret.
Look! See?
A very narrow, winding staircase, said the patrician. So?
There's nowhere to turn at the top, right? Oh, any fool can get a donkey up a minaret. But have you ever tried getting an animal to go backwards down a narrow staircase in the dark? Can't be done.
There's something about a rising staircase, said someone else.
It attracts donkeys. They think there's something at the top.
We had to push the last one off, didn't we?
Said one of the guards.
Right, it's splashed,
said his comrade in arms.
No one is pushing Valerie off of anything, snarled Betty. Any one of you tries anything like that and, swelp me, you'll feel the wrong end of...
He stopped, and a wide, horrible grin appeared behind the veil.
I mean, I'll give you a great big soppy kiss.
Several men at the back of the crowd took to their heels.
There's no need to get nasty,
said the guard.
I meant it,
said Betty, advancing. The cowering guard cringed.
Can't you do anything with her, sirs?
Us, said Lord Veterinary. Afraid not. Oh dear, it's going to be like that business in Jelly Belly. It's going to be like that business in Jelly Beigeby all over again, Al. Jelly Baby. DJELIBEYBI. Oh dear, it's going to be like that business in Jelly Baby all over again, Al.
Oh dear,
said Cullen, mugging loyally. The crowd, or at least that part that thought itself sufficiently far away from Betty, started to grin. This was street theatre. I don't know if they ever got that man down off the flagpole, Veterinary went on.
Oh, most of him they did, said Cullen.
Tell you what, said the guard hurriedly. Suppose we get a rope round it.
Huh,
Betty growled. Right, and then you'd need at least 3 men up there, and there ain't no room.
Sir, I've got an idea, whispered one of the guards. I should make it quick, said Cullen, 'cause there's no stopping Betty once she gets going.
The guards held a whispered argument.
We'd get into trouble if we do that.
You know all that stuff we were told about the war effort. That's why they were all confiscated. No one will miss it for 5 minutes.
Yeah?
But you want to tell the prince we lost one?
All right, but do you want to explain to her?
They both looked at Betty. And they're easier to steer after all, one whispered.
Valerie?
Said Sergeant Cullen. There is a problem, Betty demanded.
No, it's a fine name for a donkey, Betty.
No one is to do anything, said one of the guards. We will return.
What was all that about?
Said Cullen, watching them go. Oh, they've probably gone to get a carpet, said someone. Very nice, but I don't see how that'd help, said Betty. A flying one.
Oh, right, said Cullen. They've got one of those up at the university.
Ur has a university.
Oh, indeed, said the patrician.
How do you think Al learned what a donkey looks like? Once again, laughter dispelled about. Cullen grinned uncertainly.
I'm really good at this stupid idiot stuff, aren't I? He said. It just sort of happens.
Marvellous, said Lord Veterinary. There was another angry braying from far above. Trouble is, they're all locked up because of the war effort, said someone behind them. A piece of mud brick shattered on the ground nearby. The way it's thrashing around up there, it's going to fall off anyway. Perhaps I should persuade her to come down, said the patrician. Can't be done, Offendi. You can't get past on the stairs. You can't turn it around and it won't come down backwards. I shall consider the situation, said the patrician. He ambled back into the tavern for a moment and returned. They saw him enter the door, and they heard him climbing the staircase. Should be good, said a man behind Cullen. After a while, the braying stopped. Can't turn around, see? Far too narrow, said the elevated donkey expert. Can't turn round, won't go backwards. Well-known fact.
There's always a know-all, right, Betty? Said Cullen.
Yeah, always. The tower was full of silence. Several members of the crowd found their attention drawn to it. I mean, if you could get 3 or 4 men up the stairs, which you can't, you could sort of move it a leg at a time, if you don't mind being kicked and bitten to death. All right, back away from the tower, will you? The guards were back. One of them was carrying a rolled up carpet. All right, give us room. I can hear hooves, said someone. Oh yeah, like our friend in the face is getting the donkey down the stairs.
Hang on, I can hear them too,
said Cullen. Now all eyes stared at the door. Lord Veterinary emerged, holding a length of rope. The voice behind Cullen said, All right, it's just a bit of rope. He was probably banging a couple of coconut shells together. You mean ones that he found in the minaret? He had them with him, obviously. You mean he carries coconut shells around? You can't turn a donkey round in... All right, That's a fake donkey head. It's moving its ears. On a string. On a string. All right, it's a donkey, okay? But it's not the same donkey. It's one he had in a hidden pocket. Well, no need to look at me like that. I've seen them do it with doves. Then even the unbeliever fell silent. Donkey, minaret, said Lord Veterinary. Minaret, donkey. Minaret, a tall, slender tower of a mosque, having one or more balconies from which the summons to prayer is cried by the muezzin. Minaret. Donkey, minaret, said Lord Veterinary. Minaret, donkey. Just like that, said a guard. How did you do it? It was a trick, right? Of course it was a trick, said Lord Veterinary. I knew it was just a trick. That's right. It was just a trick, said Lord Veterinary. So, how did you do it then? You mean you can't spot it? The crowd craned to see. You had an inflatable donkey? Can you think of any reason why I should go around with an inflatable donkey? Well, one that you wouldn't mind explaining to your own dear mother? If you're going to put it like that. Sizi, said Al-Jibla. There's a secret compartment in the minaret. Must be. No, you've got it all wrong. It's just an illusion of a donkey. Well, all right. It's a good illusion. By now, half the people were around the donkey, and the others were clustered in the doorway of the minaret, looking for secret panels. I think Al and Betty, this is where we walk away, said Lord Veterinary behind Cullen. Just down this little alley here, and when we turn that corner, we run. What have we got to run for? Said Betty. Because I've just picked up the magic carpet.